Okay, Year 7. This is the next lesson. Should be your second lesson in your work from home Year 7 history studies. This is Mr. Baker, so I do teach most of you. For those I don't, you'll have Mr. Bailey, but I've recorded this lesson for you to complete whilst you are off school. So in lesson 1, we looked at the Battle of Hastings, what happened there, and how it led to the victory of William, Duke of Normandy, who then became known as William the Conqueror because he conquered England. Today we're going to look, after he conquered England, how did a man from the north of France, never really had spent much time in England, couldn't really speak the language, didn't understand the country, how did he maintain control? And to do that, we've got 3 learning objectives that we're going to focus on today. We're going to describe the key features of life in England after the Norman invasion. We're going to explain how the Norman conquest affected England and why William introduced something called a feudal system. You may have heard of that before. And we're going to analyse several reasons to create a judgment. So that means we're going to decide whether it was a success, of whether his invasion in England was successful. You're going to make a judgment. You're going to say, I think it was a success, or I think it wasn't. This is William in one of the few drawings and paintings we have. He looks something like that. We're not too sure. Okay. So, you can't see it very well, so I'm going to read all these out to you. These are problems William faced after he had won the Battle of Hastings. Some are short-term problems and some are long-term, and there's a very clear difference between them. Your short-term problems, they need dealing with now or in the very near future. Your long-term, you can deal with later. So let's have a read of these together. There is still a threat of invasion from Scandinavia, supported by a rebellion in the north of England. This is William talking, I have many enemies in the north of England. I have many enemies and I must bring them all under control. Why it goes in this order, I don't know, but we'll go on to B next. B. Many of the English lords do not want to accept me as king. I cannot trust them to keep their parts of the country under control. I need to find a way of keeping the whole country under control. C. I need to collect taxes, but I do not know how much wealth there is in the country and who owns what. D. London is England's capital city. I must take control of it quickly. Some of Harold's troops who did not come with him to Hastings are still in London and could cause problems to me. Finally, there is a very strong castle full of English soldiers in Dover. If things go wrong, they could cut my route off back to Normandy. Ignore the typo in there. So there's 5 reasons there. Now, I want you in your books, you only need to put A, B, C, D, E. Put them in order. And at the top, I want the one you would solve first. There's a typo there, I apologise. Solve first. And at the end, I want the one you'd solve last. And I want you to rank them from 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th. So threat of invasion from Scandinavia. Need to collect taxes. The English king lords don't want him. London needs to be taken control because Harold's troops are in there. And there's a strong castle full of English soldiers. I do want you to complete this. If you are struggling, just have a guess. And I'm sure you will be absolutely fine. We'll go through the answers in a sec. So pause the video, rank them A, B, C, D, and F in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I'd like you to just make a quick subtitle of William's problems. Your title for this lesson is How Did William Maintain Control? And I just want you to rank William's problems. So pause the video, do that now, and then we'll go through the answers. All right, William's problems. Now, his first issue is this one here, D. London is England's capital city. I must take control of it quickly. Some of Harold's troops that did not come into Hastings are still in London. So D, in my view, would be your first problem he needs to take care of. Because Harold's troops, people who want to kill him, who don't like him, are still in London. He needs to take control of London or he will not be able to get crowned properly as king. Now, 2, I would go for this one. This one, E. There is a very strong castle full of English soldiers in Dover. They could cut his route back off to Normandy. So he needs to get rid of this castle. So you're then left with B, A, and C. Many of the English lords do not want to accept me as king. I cannot trust them to keep their parts of the country under control. B would be my third, because once he's dealt with London and the castle, he needs to get all the lords on side or put new lords in place. So we've done D, we've done E, and we've done B, leaving A and C. I would say A is number 4 and C is number 5. And the reasons for them is that A, you need to then go to the north and make sure rebellions put down. Our next lesson we do will be on the harrying of the north, which will go into that. C is the collecting of the taxes. That is the Doomsday Book, which he doesn't do until he nearly dies in 1086. So we'll come on to that later. But that is the order you'd solve them in. D, E, B, A, C. Green pen nose. If you got it wrong, write the correct answers in. Excellent. All right. We've got 3 sources. You know I do like sources, especially in this topic. There are 3 sources. We're going to read them together. And then what we're going to do is we're going to answer these 3 questions at the bottom. So that is what we're going to do. So William dealt with some of his problems very quickly. Sources A, B and C were written at the time and show how determined William was to keep his new kingdom and to show the English who was boss. Now, usually if you're in one of my lessons, I get some volunteers to read out for me. Unfortunately, you're all sat at home, probably in bed. I imagine the television's on in the background. If so, please turn it off. But I'll read it to you. And I just want you to think about what each one is saying. So, source A. William marched to Dover, where the English, stricken with fear, prepared to surrender. But our men, greedy for loot, set fire to the town. William, unwilling that those who had offered to give up should suffer loss, gave them money for the damage his men had caused. At the captured Dover, William spent 8 years making it stronger. And that was written by William of Poitiers, a friend of William's, in about 1073. So we're talking about 7 years after the conquering. So he's saying that they went to Dover, people were surrendering, William's men started killing him and setting fire and stealing things. William said, sorry, don't do that, lads, and gave them money for the damage. Source B. It's a long one. The Archbishop of York, the people of London, and some powerful English landowners planned to put Prince Edgar. Try and remember what this guy's name was. He was one of the 4 claimants. Edgar the Etheling, well done if you remembered it. A cousin of King Edward the Confessor on the throne. But while many were preparing to fight, the English landowners went home with their army and refused to fight William. Meanwhile, William was in the south, robbing and destroying villages in Sussex, Kent, Hampshire, Middlesex and Hertfordshire. That's all in the south of the country, around London. He was even slaughtering people in the villages. William was then met by the English landowners and the leading men of London, who agreed to accept him as king. That's Florence of Worcester describes William's movements before he went to London. So you can see a lot of robbing and destroying and slaughtering people. Finally, so see a section of the Bayeux Tapestry that shows the Normans burning an English village. So that's like a house there. People inside the Normans are setting fire to it. We've got 3 questions. Look at sources A, B and C. A. Why do you think William was kind to the English in Dover, but cruel as he marched to London? So look at the way the people of Dover have reacted, focus on the surrender, and look at the way in source B, where they plan to put somebody else on the throne. Compare the different responses of Dover and London, and consider why would that influence William. B, there was a mistake in the PowerPoint, so I've changed it. In what way is source B similar to source C? So does source B match up with what source C is saying at all? Think about the slaughter of the villages. Are they the same? C, what problems has William not dealt yet? So go back to this one, this slide. I'll remove my... I didn't mean to do that. Okay, apologies. I've just brought it back up for you. The way that I've had to go reinsert it. So there it is. Go back to this page and figure out for me which one of those has he not dealt with. And just answer A, B and C for those 3 questions in your book. So pause the video now, have a go at them, and then I'll feed back and we'll see if we've got them right or not in a second. So pause the video, have a go. Alright. So, hopefully we've completed that. Task 8, why do you think William was kind to the English in Dover but cruel as he marched to London? So for this one, I would go with the people in Dover surrendered, but the people in London wanted to remove him. So William showing he rewards loyalty. So he's showing that, look, if you surrender and agree to follow me, I'll let you live. I'll give you the money to repair for the damage. If you try and overthrow me, then I will come and I will destroy your villages. Good. Well, not good. You know what I mean. Good that we've completed the task. Not good that he's killing the Anglo-Saxon people. In which way is source B similar to source C? So for this one, they both agree that William was cruel to the English. You can see that through the way in which you can see the burning of the villages, and that matches up with the robbing and destroying villages, slaughtering people. So they both back each other up. Excellent. C. What problems has William not dealt with yet? Let's go back to this one. Right. Has he dealt with London? Well, he says there how he's preparing to fight London. So yes, that's done. Give that a tick. Has he dealt with the castle? Not really. We are sort of getting there, but sort of. So I'll put that as a half. The other ones, he hasn't dealt with the English lords, he hasn't helped with taxes, and he hasn't helped with the invasion from Scandinavia. So any of those, you say Scandinavia, taxes, that would all be good. So again, green pen them, guys, you know the drill by now. Green pen if you got those correct. And we can move forward. Okay, ignore the fact it says starter, because this isn't a starter. Wherever we go, there's usually somebody in control. It says this school, because usually we'd be doing this in school. Imagine you're back at the lovely surroundings of Trentham Academy, and don't worry, we'll be back there soon, I'm sure. Can you complete your own version of the diagram on the right to show who is in control? So, if you remember back to the Anglo-Saxon lessons, we showed the rankings in society, and we had the king, the earls, the thanes, the ceorls, and the peasants. Now, William had a similar, but not quite the same version of that. All I want you to do is thinking of Trentham, I want you to rank the power structure in Trentham. Obviously, think who's going to be at the top, who's the most powerful man at Trentham Academy, and then bring it back down all the way, maybe to you guys, and rank the power structure for me. Draw a little triangle, do as many rows in the triangle as you want to, and then pause the video, do that now, and then we'll go through what I would have put. Okay, so hopefully you've done the triangle, and I'll just go through what order I would go in. So at the top, obviously, I have Mr. Whittingham, the head teacher. Below him, you have the deputy heads. So you're talking Miss Hadgett, Miss Taylor, Miss Wagg, Mr. Hall, etc., etc. Underneath that, you probably have your head of houses. You probably have then your head of departments. Then your teachers like me. And then you guys. Apologies for the handwriting. There's not much space, and I'm using a very, very poor style, so I'm going to try and upgrade in the coming days. The point being, let's now link this back to 1066. Who can we compare the head teacher to? Obviously, that would be the king. Now, in a school, and you guys might not know, but everybody has their own roles, and they all feed back to the person next up in the chain. So you guys, you do what I tell you to do. I do what my head of department tells me to do, and so on, all the way to the top. Now, that's a similar thing to what William had, and it's called the feudal system. So if you could please write that down as a title, how did the feudal system work in your book, and just underline it. Pause it if you do need time to underline it with a ruler, but some of you, I'm not going to name any names, will probably be using your A2L at this point to underline your titles, like you do in my lesson, with no pencil case, getting all your pens and pencils out of your pocket. Right, so it's going to go, imagine this is the top and this is the bottom. And we're going to work downwards, because in this system, everybody gets something, but everybody gives something. And it's quite a cleverly designed system. So here's William, right at the top. There's William. And he made some of his loyal supporters into barons and gave them land. So he gives them some land. Now the barons, who also, you'll hear them called barons and tenants-in-chief, both are fine. They were given so much land that to look after just for themselves, so they started to carve some of their land up and gave to their knights. So the land of the barons or tenants-in-chief, that went to the knights. Now the knights, that's great, they've got their land, but the knights weren't farmers, they were fighters. So what they did is they allowed the peasants to live on their land, to farm it. And they said, right, come live on my farm, and I'll protect you. And that's what they gave to peasants. Right, you come and live on my farm, you've got some land to live, and you'll get protected should things ever kick off. So the peasants, they say, fine, you protect us, you give us the land, and we'll farm the land for you and pay some taxes. So, in this situation, the peasant gets land, and the knight gets taxes. Now, you remember, the tenants-in-chief, they gave land to the knight. Now, in return, the knight's got to give something to the tenant-in-chief. So the knights promised to serve William for the barons for 40 days a year. So they say, thank you for the land. For 40 days a year, you can use me in your army. So in this bit, you could say land goes to the knight, and in response, the knights give service. Finally, we remember William gave his barons or tenants-in-chief some of the land, and in return, they swear loyalty and say, we will provide the knights for you if we need to go to war. So again, land, in response, loyalty. Now, as you'll see, all the way down, we've got land, land, land. Land trickles down. Taxes, service, and loyalty goes back up. Everybody benefits in one way or another. Obviously, William and the barons benefit more from the situation, but everyone does get something out of it. So what I'd like you to do for me is just do a very basic, put William at the top of your page, then barons, then knights, and then peasants. And all I want you to do, guys, is very simply draw an arrow showing what will go down to each one. Then on the other side, do arrows and write what goes up. So we know land goes there, etc. Can you fill in the remaining 4 for me, just in your book? Doesn't need to be any more than a quarter or a third of a page. Right. Hopefully you've done that. If not, pause it, go back and do it, because we're on to another task. Why did William use this? I'd like you to think, and usually I do a think, pair, share, but unless you like FaceTiming each other, there's going to be difficult to think, pair, and share. So I'm asking you to think, basically, and see if your answers match mine. Why would William decide to use this system? I want you just to write 3 ideas down. I don't care if you get it wrong. I want you to have a go. So just have a go for me. Why did William introduce the feudal system? I want you to come up, why did he decide to do this? Pause it, have a go, and see if it matches up with me in a second. Alright, let's see if what you've got matches what I've got. Why did William introduce the feudal system? The first one is to reward his followers. Remember, William crossed the English Channel into... let me make that neater for you. Followers. When he crossed the English Channel, he had thousands of men agreeing to follow him, and he had to reward them. These were his tenants-in-chief and his knights, and they both get land. The tenants-in-chief get land from William, and the knights get the land from the tenants-in-chief. So he was rewarding his followers. Secondly, it allows him to control the peasants. The peasants are now controlled, they have land to live on, and they are under the control of the knights who owe their loyalty to the barons who owe their loyalty to William. Finally, it shows everyone their role in society. You had no confusion as to whereabouts you sat in the Norman feudal system. So no peasant's going to get ideas above his station and think, I'm going to challenge a baron, or challenge the king, or challenge a knight. He knows what his job is. His job is to farm and to pay taxes. And in return, he is owed protection by the knight. And whilst he gets something back, he's less likely to kick off. So it keeps everyone in their place and shows everyone who the main power, who the power lies with. And the power lies, as we always know, with the king. And it reminds people that the power lies with the king. Good. So make sure if you've got them, obviously green pen. If not, can you add them in green pen, please, underneath whatever you've written already. We're almost done, folks. Now, just want you to do, and use a ruler, unlike me, positives and negatives. And I want you to spend about, well, let's say a minute. And I want you to come up with 2 positives and 2 negatives of using the feudal system, please. So do that now. Pause the video and then unpause it. And we'll see if your ideas match mine. Alright, so really the positives, we can just sort of utilise these and put them in here. So positives include stuff like, positives obviously include controlling the population, rewarding his followers, putting everyone in the place. Now, your negatives are a bit more complicated. Number 1, you're relying on others. William, when he gives land away, he's relying on his barons. The barons are relying on the knights, and the knights are relying on the peasants. You are sharing power. And it's a very risky strategy. Number 2, would peasants be happy? Or will they be disgruntled at this setup where they're clearly at the bottom? And we're going to come to this in a coming lesson on the harrying of the North, where they sort of are very happy to kick off. So here's a nice cartoon which just demonstrates what's going on. And I'll talk you through it. So at the top we've got William. Now, although William's at the top, he is sort of, in those days, he was at the command of God. So he's saying, dear God, I promise to look after this country you've given me. That's his boss. It's God. There he is. So the king owns all the land. Underneath him are the tenants and chief. You've got a bishop and you've got a baron and like really fancy guys. And there's about 200 of them in the country. We promise to help you rule and provide knights for your army is what they're saying. Under that, you've got your under-tenants or your knights. So you've got tenants, chief, and under-tenants. Under-tenants are also knights. We promise to serve you and fight for the king when you ask us. And the peasants. Now, obviously, there's one king, 200 tenants and chiefs. So you've got like 1,200 of all this. All this here is about 1,200 people. And then you've got 1.25 million peasants. So it's very bottom-heavy. We promise to work ourselves silly for all of you and do as we are told. Now you can understand they all are getting something quite positive and those guys aren't happy at all. And look at the way they're holding up the entire pyramid. It's all reliant on them doing their job and not kicking off. So hopefully this helps to make it make sense for you. If not, spend a few minutes looking at it just until it clicks. Confidence task. This is the last thing before we finish. Basically, if you feel really confident about how William gained control, his problems in the feudal system, you're going to do the green task. All you're going to do is answer this question. William gained support in England by using the feudal system. Do you think it will work? And to do that, I need to think about who will be happy and who won't be happy. So you just need to say, I think that the feudal system did work or did not work, and because. If you finish, I'd like you to come up with a motto to sum up the feudal system. So, remember your place would be a good one, or do your job, or the king is the boss, or something like that. If you're not too sure how the feudal system all works, I want you to answer this question in red. I want you to explain how the feudal system helped William to gain support in England. So you just got to explain, how did it help him win support? So think about the fact that people owed him something, think about everyone gained from it, think about the fact he rewarded his soldiers, and try and use the word baron and feudal system. Ignore homage and ignore absolute. We'll come on to that in another lesson. So yeah, once you've done that, basically that concludes this lesson for today. Thanks for watching and taking part. There are going to be more to come. If you do need to speak to me, as always, it's jbaker@TrentonAcademy, all one word, .co.uk. And I will see you in our next lesson. Ciao.